What is going on, everyone? Parsnip here, and today we're gonna go ahead and do another speed build. Now this time, guys, it is gonna be a really big speed build, and again it is gonna be a modded speed build. That means that a lot of the things that you guys do see here, be it the furniture or the materials, might not actually be in your game. Now before we begin, I'm gonna go ahead and talk a little bit about the mods that I do use, which is chat's furniture. That's pretty much all the decorations that you're gonna see, from vases and little details like banners and things like that. Most of those are from that mod. Two other mods that I am using and some of the materials that I do use are also from them, which is the tremer mod, a really big mod that's filled with a bunch of things, as well as the calamity mod. Now these are mods that I am using on my playthrough. That's going pretty slow as of right now. However, hopefully we pick up the pace a little bit in the future. Now, as for the build itself, I am going to be using quite a bit of new materials, so you won't see that many materials from vanilla Terraria. So pretty much the main material that I do use from vanilla is shadewoods. The other two are actually glacier or however it's pronounced, as well as gloomstone, and I'm pretty sure those two are either from tremer or the calamity mod. So as you can also tell here, I just go ahead and terraform just a little bit and go ahead and start on the building. Now this build is actually a lot bigger than most of the speed builds I do in this channel. However, I was just enjoying it so much, and I did want to make a little village type team with these new materials and all of that, and I figured that I go ahead and make it a pretty solid size. Now this is definitely big enough for the majority of the NPCs. I'm not sure how many NPCs in totals are with all the mods that I do have installed, but for a good portion, like pretty much if you just play vanilla, you should have more than enough room if you were ever to make houses here for them. So let's go ahead and get started. Now I pretty much just started off making these holes so I could go ahead and make a really big support for the tower. Now, why did I make this is because I did want to use a little bit of the bottom part, because I didn't just want to go upwards. I did want to use the underground section, and I figured that I should start off with the first tower going quite a bit underground, because that's pretty much going to be my threshold for my other builds. So you will be seeing other things underground, and the main thing that I will do underground, it's not really underground, it's more of like in a canyon, and that will be towards the end and towards the right side. Now here you guys can probably see quite a bit of those new materials, furnitures, and all of that being used. So this first tower pretty much consists of these three main blocks or rooms. In the above section, then we have a bunch of random spaces going down below. Now these random spaces, I just went ahead and filled them with whatever, and I will be filling up every single room as I make them. I figure this will be easier, that way I don't be lazy later on when I do finish the entire structure. Now I do notice that when I do make really big builds, I do start slacking when it comes to furnitures and decoration. I figured that this time I'm gonna go ahead and counter that by adding furniture pretty much around the same time that I do build. Now this isn't gonna be for everything, but for the majority, that's how I decided to make it. Now here you can go ahead and see me make a background tower, and you can probably see what is going on with the background over here, and that is the biome is changing because of the glacier blocks. Now these are bricks, however they do still change the background. So if you do have the mods and you do decide to use this material, note that your biome will be different once you use a lot of this material. That's how you guys will start seeing it changing more and more, and later towards the build it would just be all blue, pretty much a different tone of blue, which is pretty cool. It does still fit the theme because this tower is pretty much two tones of blue and gray. And back to where I was in the building, I did make that background tower. However, the upper section of that tower is solid. Now I did make it solid not only because I wanted it to be practical, I wanted it to be space that I could still use. I did want to make the section secure. You know, I wanted to make sure that other creatures and monsters won't be coming in. Now, like I always say, I do try to think when I'm building. I think it's a really fun idea, and that is to go ahead and imagine that you're going to be living on it, or who will be living on it, and what you will want it to do. Now, since this is going to be an ice biome and all that, it is going to have different mobs and all types of things like that, and I will want it to be completely safe and secure. That's why I decided to make the left side a little bit safer. I will be adding actuators later on to the entrance, that way it will be only openable by players because of player sensors, and this is going to be on the left and the right side. So this whole section right now, though it doesn't seem safe because it's just the background and all creatures and things like that could come in. Later on it will be completely safe in season for a while, or open doors or things like that. Zombies can't open those doors because there are actuators. Now here you could go ahead and see me start making the first underground section, which is pretty cool. And you can also see above this underground section is a little house. Now this house is pretty much inspired by some temples that you do see like in Vietnam or Thailand and things like that. I do like the aesthetic as it's not really, it's hard to say, it's not actually similar to them, but it is inspired. So for those of you that do travel and do visit the places, or maybe you live there, you probably notice that there will be some similarities because I do like the way it looks. Now it is a bit of a stretch to say it's inspired, but because of the colors and just the overall theme of it, just pretty much reminds me slightly of it. I mean, if you look at it with a different color, for example, if it was like red and black or orange and black, maybe some gold, you probably notice a bigger resemblance. So here we could go ahead and see these random rooms that I am making here. Now you could go ahead, if you do make something like this, make these into more practical themes. I did decide to make a lot of these pretty random and not that useful. You know, it's not the most practical of buildings. It does look cool. It could easily be here a storage room, a crafting station, or whatever it is you want. However, since I won't be actually playing on this world, it's just for building, I don't really see a need to make a crafting station in every single build or stuff like that, or a chest room or anything of the sort that's too common. So I do just fill them with random furnitures and plants and things like that. So most of these rooms aren't actually that practical. However, there is a lot of practical rooms when it comes to NPCs because they do put chairs and tables all around and they just spawn in. So here, in order for vines not to grow, because I do decide to leave the upper part dirt with grass, I do add some silk ropes or wool ropes, whatever they're called. They're the purple ones that's used with, I think, silk. And I do go ahead and just fill it with vases and painting. And you probably noticed that I do use on the upper section as well, I use banners this time as well as platforms to keep vines from growing. And I do like the fact that I did use banners because the banners do fit. It makes it look pretty cool. It also gives a little bit of buffs for anybody that's in here. So here we go ahead up to the upper section pretty much, and we start working on that house that I mentioned before. Now this house pretty much has 3 rooms. You could go ahead and use the roof. I personally don't use the roofs on any of these builds, and you probably noticed at the end that I forgot to put the background in one of the roofs, which is a bummer. I will fill it next time. However, I didn't want to log in again on Terraria, load the mods and all of that, just to put like 5 backgrounds on a roof. But worry not, the next time I play, I will be sure to add them. Now, you probably also noticed that I do like bridges. I think bridges are great to fill in gaps as well as covering lakes and things like that. So that's why you guys will see 3 bridges. I also think that bridges is a great filler. You know, you're gonna have a house and then another house, for example, next to it. You probably want a little bit of space in between to work with, and what is a great way to fill in that space is with bridges. Now this doesn't necessarily have to be bridges, it could be anything else. It could be a little farm or some random sections of anything pretty much. I decide to fill it with bridges because I do have a lot of caves, holes, and rivers, and I think overall just having a solid way to get across that's not dirt, because I do think in between buildings, if it's just dirt, it is pretty boring, it is pretty bland, and it just goes to show that you didn't put that extra effort in, which is with the details. That's why in my entrances right there, I normally try to fill it in a little bit, either with some fences, some backgrounds, anything that makes it look like you have a smooth progression towards your build. And that's what I always try to achieve with my stuff. And hopefully you guys do this on your builds. Now you don't just make a square completely in the middle of anything pretty much, you know, like if you make a house in the crimson and all around is crimson, make a little platform for you guys to be able to walk in, like you see in normal houses or builds or things like that. When you go outside your house, you know, normally you have some steps You maybe have your driveway, you have some asphalt, you have a little garden and things like that. You know, it's not, you don't go from the road directly to your house. You have that little progression that is your little space, you know, where you will open the door, where you're safe, where you have fencing, where you can take the dogs out and things like that. So here you guys can go ahead and see that build that I am making on a canyon. Now this is going to be the biggest building of all of them, and I did like the way I made this. I did make it so that NPCs could pretty much roam around and have a little bit of fun in these houses. Even though they're pretty small for an actual person to live in, this is humongous for most NPCs builds, because NPCs normally are just in a little square box on their house. I decided that I am going to make bigger rooms. Like for example here, this NPC has a bed, he has a dresser, he has a library, he has space to store his clothes and whatever materials he has. He has a table to eat with and a piano to kill some time, as well as a little balcony for him to walk, water his plant, and just take a look at the view. I'm also going to make it pretty realistic because all of these will have access to them. You'll probably see this just a little bit later on, that you will be able to get in and out of the house completely fine if you actually were to live here. Next up, I make the bottom section, and I do, again, inspired by those temples and things like that. I made that bottom wall, that really strong structure that will prevent mobs from breaking it and destroying it and it being worn out and things like that. It's just a really big solid chunk of bricks. Again, I do make little sections of the roofs in between because it's aesthetically pleasing, and again, it fits the theme that I'm going with for this base pretty much. And you can see that the rooms on this floor again is pretty big, and I'm doing the same thing as I did before. I do want to make these look like they're practical to live in, right? That the NPCs have room, they have some time to kill, they're not just crammed in a little tiny room. They have things to do, places to be. If they want to get out and explore the world, by all means. But when they are in their house, they aren't just with a table and a chair like what everybody pretty much does. Now, I'm not saying this is a practical build, because it's not. If you were going to do this for every single NPC, you would have a really big house, especially if you decide to add like your banner collection, your trophy collection, your armor collection, your storage space, your chests, your paintings, your crafting stations, and all of the above, your teleport room. It would be humongous. It would probably be like the main base that I made on my newest world, which took over 20 hours to make. So I'm not sure how many people want to waste 20 hours on a build, but that's how long that base took. And this one is pretty long as well. So here we go ahead and start working on the upper section. Now this house in particular won't actually have a roof. I did want it to keep it below, and I did make a base above it that sort of gets in the way. And I really like the way I made this structure in the canyon, as well as this house. Now this is gonna be the right wall. This is what's gonna keep the mobs away from the main sections of the house. And worry not, there will be other corridors and things to get in the house. So it's not just the upper section. That little room in the bottom that serves no purpose is actually gonna be a hallway pretty much for people to walk by. And this is what I was talking about before. I am making it ways to get in and out. Now I did break the staircases a little bit just so that it looks a little bit worn out, not completely, but something that looks a little bit worn, like it does have some use. And exactly like I said before, you will be able to go in and out of every single room in here. If you were in pretty much even without wings, you should be able to do that just fine. Now I didn't test it without wings or super high jumping bonuses and things like that, but in theory, right, it should work just fine. And here we go, we made the last room on the above section. I did add a big painting, more tables for NPC to spawn in. I made them a little section with plants, a little storage space that's hidden underneath the stairs, and a sofa for them to sleep on, as well as a miniature crafting station and a pretty big balcony for them to go out, water the plants, explore, and things like that. So here is what I was talking about, the progress. You know, you want to make it smooth, you want to make some sort of progression, right? You don't want it just to be dirt and then completely turn into the building. So this is why I made a little staircase up, a little bridge pretty much you could call it. It's not a bridge, it's just a stairway that goes up, and I do pretty much set it in towards the base, so it's actually part of the base now. And then you could go ahead and see me add something different, and that is fences with faces at the entrance. That way, again, a smooth progression from the dirt towards the build. That way you know you're coming in here, you know that this is not part of the dirt, and that is your little safe zone that you could go out, water the plants, open the door, you're safe there. It has lighting and all of that, you don't have to be afraid. And back to what I was talking about, yet again, this is the place that I decided to open and make another entrance towards the canyon. Now we're pretty much almost done here. It has actually been 15 minutes so far of me talking. Hopefully you guys don't mind too much. I think I've been doing a pretty good job explaining what I've been doing with this space. Now something that I do want to mention, I do use a lot of materials in the backgrounds. Again, I always tell you guys that if you think it looks too plain, like here it's just a bunch of different rectangles with a little bit of details and things like that. If you do want it to stand out and look full or look unique or make it look like it's actually that you actually worked on it and not just made it completely out of material, I always suggest that not only do you use different bricks, here I'm using 3, which is the shade wood, the gloomstone, and the glacier bricks and wood, as well as I am using different walls. I'm using fences, I'm using bricks, I'm using every single material that I can. So that goes from shadewood walls to shadewood fences, to gloomstone walls, to glaciers walls, glacier fences. So you can see that there is a huge amount of effort in towards these builds because I do use a lot of material. Each room does look unique and different. When you go into a house, not every single room is usually the same color. You don't walk into a house and the outside of the house is white and every single room inside it's white. No, it's normally different, right? You have maybe some wood finishing on the walls. Maybe one of your walls is made of stone. Maybe your sister's room is pink or a lighter color. Maybe your room is a dark gray or a lighter gray. Maybe your kitchen is with tiles, or maybe your bathroom is with tiles. It's normally different, and I think a lot of people take that for granted in Terraria. I don't think people consider that, you know, you don't want every single room in your house to be exactly the same. You don't want your whole house made out of this particular type of wood. Imagine what it would be like to go in your house and everything is made of this specific type of brick. Your floors are this type of brick, your walls are this type of brick, your roof is this type of brick. It would be completely boring. I'm not even talking about the decorations at this point, I am talking about just the walls. So make sure you add a little bit of details, fencing, maybe some windows and things like that. Last up, we have the last room that I go ahead and build, guys, and that's pretty much just a little safe room, a hidden treasure room with some golds, things like that, more bed spaces, and pretty much the last underground section of this build. Finishing up, I just add a little bit of details, some lighting, and that's pretty much it for this build, guys. I really hope you enjoyed it. It took quite a long time to finish, and I do really enjoyed the build, not only making it but the end results. I think it looks pretty cool and I would definitely want to live here. So as always, guys, thank you all for watching and for the massive support, and I'll catch you all next time.